think it's really exciting because when you look at your own background, for example, and you are able to take a step back and see the ways that you've grown, continue to set new goals and reach those goals and continue to reflect, then you look at those things as being a skill set. It's not necessarily something that's unique about me. And so the exciting part is that whether I'm working with someone who is at the highest levels of leadership or I'm talking to my teenage daughter, right?
Mhm.
I can separate those and say it can always become part of who you are, this great sense of leadership or these characteristics that you aspire to.
Mhm.
So I think it helps me separate those into skills. And then when you're talking about something as a skill, then skills can be learned, they can be practiced, right? And they can progress.
Well, folks, thanks so much for being here again at the Executive Excel podcast. I'm excited to have Barb Thompson here today. Dr. Thompson or just Barb Thompson? Just a quick clarification.
Just Barb. Call me
Just
Barb.
Barb. Okay, perfect. Well, Barb, welcome to the show. Barb is a trailblazer in the fields of leadership, mindset, and organizational transformation. She's a board-certified organizational and business consulting psychologist and a former U.S. Army operational psychologist. She brings a unique blend of tactical insight, heart, and humanity to the room when she enters. So she's led assessment and development programs for special ops forces, coached top leaders across industries, and helped organizations reshape culture from the inside out. But her mission goes far deeper than that. She is here to change the world one you at a time by helping people discover their joy, combat burnout, and lead with purpose in their life. So whether you're leading a team, navigating transition, or simply seeking more meaning in your day-to-day life, Barb is here to bring clarity, courage, and strategy to help you move forward. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm grinning ear to ear after that intro. That was so kind. I'm so happy.
You're welcome. It's good to have you. I always love to start the show with people getting to know a little bit about you. And I read a little bit about your personal journey. And I think it's really powerful to bring that to the table today so people really get to know who you are. From what I understand, you went from a situation of being raised by an independent mother, a single mother, going from homeless to a doctorate degree. And obviously you served in the armed forces as well in the US. Very powerful story. So how has that journey shaped your approach to the work you're doing now and to leadership development and just to who you are as a person?
That's a huge question, Tammy.
Right? I know.
That,
it's
yes,
never easy.
Yeah. I was so fortunate to have a mom and other people in my life who, despite and in spite of the external circumstances or what we saw with our human eyes, were able to tell me, but this is just part of the picture that you, and they really spoke that over me early. And I think it just became the way that I thought, not only about myself, but about other people, that my circumstances are building something in me that is good, even if the circumstance itself seems terrible. And so, yeah, I had some of those terrible experiences. And as we humans do, continue to have hard days, and we can't predict those. We just know that probably a few are coming our way, right? So I'm grateful for all of my experiences, good and bad. But when I look at other people, whether it be in an assessment and selection for, a really difficult and dangerous task, or just in general or leadership coaching, I really try to set the assumptions aside. I know that as someone who has a doctor in front of their name, I can get a lot of those assumptions. I remember showing up at the last unit I worked at, very high level special operations doctor. They had some kind of assumptions about me, and it was so fun to get to kind of tear down those assumptions about maybe you grew up with money or you kind of grew up with a silver platter. It was like, oh no, none of that is true, guys. So I think it just helps me look at other people without assumption.
Yeah, I love that. I love that notion that it kind of, your experience, it seems like, broadened your ability to see people in various different shades, not just in a one-dimensional way, which is awesome. So then how do you parlay that into your high-performing leadership and coaching that you do now? How does that sort of help you to do that work?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting because when you look at your own background, for example, and you are able to take a step back and see the ways that you've grown, continue to set new goals and reach those goals and continue to reflect, then you look at those things as being a skill set. It's not necessarily something that's unique about me. And so the exciting part is that whether I'm working with someone who is at the highest levels of leadership or I'm talking to my teenage daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can separate those and say it can always become part of who you are, this great sense of leadership or these characteristics that you aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it helps me separate those into skills. And then when you're talking about something as a skill, then skills can be learned, they can be practiced, right? And they can progress.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned having a teenage daughter. I have one as well. Actually, she's an adult now. I wonder how, as women, we have different experiences in our lives that may or may not shape how we are as leaders. So as you talk to women leaders and you talk to women in your life, is there a difference between the genders in your perspective? Is there an experiential thing or an influence that has shifted their perspective that you sort of bring into the equation? I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think I have worked with some very high level female leaders. And I wouldn't say that it is something unique to their femaleness that makes them special. I haven't seen like a theme that goes across all females, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I treat them like I would anyone, and of course, like their past experiences matter, their goals matter, and also the values that they hold in their life matters. Sometimes because women tend to hold some different roles, especially once we get to if we have a family or something like that, then those are the types of things that tend to come up in conversation a little bit differently than they might with their male counterparts. But across the board, I wouldn't say that there's any type of like one theme that I've seen with female leaders. I hope that's not disappointing, but
No. I'm always curious about strong leadership and how if there are differences between the genders, but even also just between age brackets. And I'm just always curious about that. So that's why I sometimes ask those questions, because I just like to get other people's perspectives around these topics. I do have a question around the fact that it seems like you've worked across a variety of different enforcement fields, like military, law enforcement, and also corporate spaces. So what are some of the common things that you see that really makes those teams great?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So fundamentally, it's going to be trust. That comes, I would say, there is a greater opportunity for a deeper level of trust within the military teams that I've worked with, because at the end of the day, the tasks are more dangerous. And so the skin in the game is different. They're not there for profit. They're there for very different reasons. And so I would say fundamentally, though, even outside of the military, it is going to be a sense of trust. That can be difficult, especially for people who are high performing, because you have this feeling that you don't want anything to fail and you're probably the best person to do it. And so with building a foundation of trust, it also is accompanied by a few things that I think are non-negotiables if you do truly want a team that is going to be high performing. And those are going to be the way that you communicate with transparency. When you share the burden or the excitement of anything that's going on, then the people around you on your team feel that you trust them with that information. And so I think being as transparent as possible, even when it hurts, is the right thing to do if you want to set your team apart. And with that transparent trust comes a sense of vulnerability. So the fact that you are human, you are, by the way, you are human. Typically allowing our humanness to come into the work that we do helps build a bond of trust a bit faster and a bit deeper than if we say, try to put on this suit that looks very perfect on the outside. Typically that makes people just feel more self-conscious, and you might not hear about problems going on in the organization or on your team as quickly, which is not a good thing as well. So I would say fundamentally it's that foundation of trust. I could go on to other characteristics, but for now I'll leave it there.
Given your background, I'm curious as to, I know having come from emergency management myself, there's sort of an element of trauma bonding that sometimes happens in teams when you big things. So I don't know if this would be a good place to sort of talk about the difference between I don't want to say authentic trust because that's not really what it is, but like the difference between a trauma bond and a trusting bonded relationship. So there's nuance there, but I
Hmm.
think it's important to sort of bring this up, especially for folks that are in the military / emergency management sectors where this is in fact a case in many.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that trauma bond, like you're talking about, is that you feel comfortable with that person. You feel like they understand you because you guys have had a mutual experience, right? The trust I'm talking about is an active form of trust. It's like the decisions that you choose to make every day in the way that you communicate and bring yourself to work. I mean, on the teams that I've been on and worked with, certainly there is both. Over
Mm,
time, there is both. But what we try to do is initially set them up for a culture of feedback where you build trust through transparency and vulnerability and a willingness to have difficult conversations.
yeah. So important. So thanks for that. That's important. So we know that burnout is a crisis, right? It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about burnout and how it's really affecting high achievers because we see burnout in high achievers because high achievers don't know how to sort of either set boundaries properly because they're so committed to their work or what have you. So what do you believe are some of the most effective strategies, not only in preventing it, but then once they have burnout, they start recovering from?
You're right. This is a huge topic. And I think that initially it was like post COVID when we started to see this in the upper echelons of the special operations community in the US military, anyway, because I think part of it was not only obviously the world was going through a very painful period of time, but there were things that we were not allowed to do. There was some freedom that was taken away. And with that freedom, also a sense of purpose. And so I believe the cases of burnout that I've seen, and it was high. So we ended up doing some research just within our community,
Mhm.
and the burnout rate was like in the 60s and 70th percentile. That was scary. So we knew we had to do something about it. And the way we gauged that was like, are people isolating themselves from the people they're working with, right? Do they feel disconnected from that community, which is huge in the military? And it's part of the reason, people have such a hard time transitioning out is because the people they love and care for and trust, are no longer a part of their daily lives. We also looked at like what's being rewarded. So is their work being seen? A lot of these high performers are also very, very humble. The ones that I've worked with, they're not doing it. They're not in it for the money, right? They're not in it for the glory because they don't get to tell anybody about what they did. They're in it to see the work succeed and to make the world a better place. Even in that, it helps to know that someone sees the work that you're doing. And then, as an organization, like how are we celebrating our wins? Are we just moving on to the next thing, like literally making this place a grind, or are we stopping to reflect on you guys? Like, let's not miss out on all the work that we've been doing. And so, I think the way that you keep a team engaged is that as a leader, you're very sensitive to keep your pulse on the work, even the quiet work that's being done when no one's watching, and celebrate that work, even if it's not in a public way. A lot of people that I've worked with don't enjoy kind of public fanfare, but they do still appreciate when someone sees the work that they're doing. And I think the last thing that leaders can do is go over the top to make a message both transparent and repeatable about this is the purpose, this is why we're doing this work.
Mm,
So when people are struggling to see like, why am I going to work, why am I putting in all this effort, at the end of the day, what does it matter? Like, so what? As the leader, you have to put meat on the bones to the so what, and not just once. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I just said this, these are smart people, like they don't need to hear it again. Yes, they do. Keep
yeah.
saying it, keep saying it, because there's so much research on, yeah, the work that we do, it may be difficult. It may be the most difficult project we ever face, but those usually end up being the most rewarding. So burnout is not about difficult work. It's not about putting in the hours, but it certainly is about that disconnection and not being able to see the purpose behind the pain.
I get what you're saying, because for me, my last experience of burnout was post-COVID as well, in emergency management and public health. I was working for the Public Health Agency of Canada. So we were in basically the front line at the federal level, but we were sort of front line from the perspective of having to deal with borders, having to manage some operational responses at the federal level. Super exhausting, long days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, you're absolutely bang on when it comes to alignment and understanding the value of what you're doing. And I think for me, I understood the value, but I think the values for me meant that I was working so hard in what I was doing in my work that I was neglecting other parts of my life that also mattered. So it felt like I was
Right.
disconnected from my personal life. And so that
Yes.
misalignment, if you will, from my own life
Mm-hmm.
is really what kind of set off my burnout. And eventually my body just sort of said, okay, you're done and you need to go off.
Yes.
That's when I started
Yes.
to get into somatics and breath work and mindfulness and all the things, right, to try to get myself back on track. In what you're talking about, there's a lot of mindset issues there around understanding what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, why you're doing it. So then how can you help a person move that mindset forward? Part of it is a leadership role, but what if the person really is truly burned out? They're at a point they're like, I just don't know if I can keep going. Is there something you can sort of support that leader with to kind of keep them going, to keep them moving forward? And at what point do you say, no, time to rest, time to take a break, time to disconnect and take care of you? And what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I think that time to take a break and time to rest should always be planned as a part, especially if you are a individual in a high performing role. That's what we teach and what we preach and what we try to celebrate is there's no more blackballing in the community about people taking time for their family and people making really strong boundaries for the other values that set their heart on fire, right? And we saw that, like, we're going to lose our top performers if you're just making them come to work. It's basically just busy work for them when the whole reason they are throwing their life on the line is for a greater purpose, right? And so what we saw is that a greater level of freedom, and then it makes a big difference when you feel a sense of control over your environment. It helps you be able to breathe a little bit, right? Deeper. You don't feel as helpless. And a feeling of helpless every day is it's going to add up to
Yeah.
a complete burnout, right? You have to take a complete stop, a complete break. And so, even as people arrived to this particular unit that I keep referring to, what we would teach them at the beginning is not necessarily like tactics and techniques that came a little bit later, a few weeks later, but we would teach them about themselves. We would do one-on-ones and say, hey, this is probably like here are the trends that we see here. And so we took a preventive approach, even when hiring the next generation, to say now, myself, a sports psychologist, would say, okay, if this is high performance is going to equal some stress and recovery. That's just what it is, period. And so we tried to change it, not just like as a mindset thing, but like factually, when you think about physical training, in order to build muscle, you stress the muscle and then you rest the muscle. It's the same principle. And so then, right, the task is creating a culture for the organization to follow where the top leaders in the organization don't feel like they've lost all control and that the individuals are just kind of off on their own, making their own schedules. Because I think that is an uncomfortable feeling as well. But we tried to just make it matter of fact. Like, of course you need rest. Of course you do. So that is non-negotiable. You need to decide what that looks like, but you need to do it early and do it often. It is a part of your rhythm now, because now we're asking you to do a higher level of things. You might be gone from your family more often, or you might have to take a sudden trip. Right. And so planning and preparation, and then just setting up that rhythm of rest and stress from the beginning, even like before things get really dicey, I think is a very important thing to do as you're onboarding people, especially if you know that your environment is particularly stressful.
Yeah, I love that, because one of the things one of my former managers was post-military, and introduced me to the battle rhythm concept. And it was interesting because when I came into the organization that I was working at during COVID, the first thing I asked people was, what's our battle rhythm going to look like? And I remember looking at me like, because this is a civilian organization, they're looking at me going, what are you talking about? Well, okay. So when do we get to take time off? When do we replace? They're like, what's the rhythm look like?
That's right.
And part of the challenge was that our organization was very, very wide, but not very deep. And so, when you're one or two deep, having that sort of cadence that's sustainable over the long haul, because that's part of the problem when you're in a COVID response. We knew going into this. I remember the January of 2020 when I saw what was happening in Asia, and being from public health, I thought, this is our next pandemic, and we're going to be into this for the next 2 years. So we had to start planning, okay, well, how does this look? And so, it was a shift in culture because we had to completely pivot how we ran our business. We couldn't do 16 and 18-hour days and expect our leadership to be able to sustain that for 2 years. So we had to figure out what that looked like and cross cover and so on. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's so key, such a key piece. How do you support your own mental health as you work with clients, but also as you just perform your own work? What's some of the things that you do for yourself?
Yeah, I would say, just personally speaking, my faith is foundational for me. I think it's always been kind of like this rock solid wisdom there's an answer, right? And carry me through difficult situations. And so they start to add up, and so during times of difficulty, I can reflect on the past and the evidence that my faith has been a good foundation, and it's still a solid foundation. And then sleep is very important. And so I prioritize sleep. Nutrition is important for me. And my family. So I try to, just be simple with it, and, whole foods. And then exercise is very important. I love CrossFit. You don't have to love CrossFit. You can love anything. But I think just getting outside and moving your body is what our bodies were meant to do. And so all of those things, along with quiet time and reading and connecting with other people, are my go-tos for, I would say that is my rhythm. I can definitely tell if I haven't connected or had conversations or, worked out, like things are going to start to feel odd and itchy. And, you start to feel feelings that are uncomfortable. And so getting back into that rhythm of all of those things, definitely. And it's like just a constant, you're always adjusting here and there, but for me, so those are some of the things that are really effective.
Really important too when you're managing stress, because I think I gained about 40 pounds during COVID just from not exercising, not taking care of myself, not eating properly, being at my desk 18 hours. And so I love that you're bringing all those very basic, essential things that we need to remember to just commit to and prioritize in our lives. I tried boxing for the first time the other day with a boxing trainer, and I loved every minute of it. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to be doing this from now on, because it's just so much fun and such a kick-ass workout. It was
stress reliever.
Sore. Yeah, I'm still sore today. Exactly. What is one question you believe every leader should be asking themselves, but probably isn't?
Oh, Tammy. I think that, we have hit on a big one. I would say sometimes leaders, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the organization that you're leading, right? And your whole life revolves around it. But to ask yourself, how is my time investment aligned with how I want to end my life? So just, it's a principle that I've talked about. We did some officer coaching. So leaders in the military organization, and talking about just the ability to, not every day, but just kind of number your days. And it's a nice way to refocus on the most important things, and not get too caught up in, the daily urgent fires, right, that are always coming up. So I think just, have I numbered my days recently? And am I doing what's really most important to me?
Love that. As we start to close out the show, I have I'm going to ask you to share your where to find you and so on in a minute, but I'm trying something new, and I thought I would ask you if you'd be willing to do this. So I have, it's something new. It's a fun way to really help you a light and fun way for you to answer some questions to kind of get a bit of introspection about who you are. And they're just fun. And it's basically inspired from the Actor Studio from James Lipton. I don't know if you used to watch that at all, but he used to have these thoughtful questions he would ask the actors every time they would close the show. And I just thought it was really great because it allows people to really reveal some insights about themselves and some thoughts around their presence and so on. So if you're open to it, I'm going to ask you these 10 questions. They're 10 very easy questions.
Okay.
And then
they're
kind of like,
she says they're easy, guys. She says they're easy.
They're easy. They're easy. But they should be fun. So what's one word you wish people used more?
Oh, one word. Grateful.
Beautiful. If your inner voice had a soundtrack, what song would it be playing?
I don't know. If it would probably be like Eye of the Tiger. It would probably be something really cheesy that's like, yes, let's do it.
I love that. What's a small pleasure that always makes you smile?
Watching my children play.
If your leadership style was a drink, what would it be and why?
It would be a cup of dark coffee with cream because it's just simple and honest and it's so good.
If your calendar could talk, what would it beg you to stop doing?
Oh, I love this question, Tammy. I'm going to be asking other people this question. Oh, what would it beg you to stop doing? You can tell I like to be thoughtful about my answers. I'm not just shouting something out. I think that I've definitely struggled with like overdoing it in the past, and so I don't know if it would beg me to stop doing anything right now, but that's definitely been a struggle. And I think I've had to work through like, what are my core values and what can I say no to today? That's right. A terrible question, but what can I say no to today is something I think about often, because again, it just like reprioritizes you to kind of what's most important. So
100%. Love that. I love that counter question. That's really good. What's one thing you do in your personal life that might surprise people who know you professionally?
I love being outside. So I have a garden. So even now we're trying to raise things, straight from the seed. So that's always interesting. You never know what you're going to get, but.
Perfect. When do you feel most alive?
It's usually either when I'm connecting with, I'll just say like a deep connection with a person, and it can be doing a number of things, or when I am like doing something that's really, really hard physically. I love that.
Beautiful. What's something you wish more leaders would dare to do?
Oh, take time off. Mm-hmm.
Take time off. And what's your favorite sound?
Sound. Probably, I've never heard this question. Oh gosh, you're really making me think. I think
another way James Lipton used to ask the question, what sound or noise do you love? It's another way to ask the question.
Mm-hmm. I love the sound of the ocean. I love the sound of my kids laughing. Those are two sounds I love.
The last question is, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Those dreams you have are absolutely possible. Everything is possible.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask you to share what's the best place for people to find you if they resonated with anything you said today and want to look more into who you are and what you do. Where should they go? And by the way, folks, the links will be in the show notes, but I'd just like to offer the opportunity for you to share where you would like to direct people.
Thank you. I hope people have enjoyed this conversation. I feel like it was a little bit about me, which makes me uncomfortable, but I would love to have more conversations with people about them. And it's you can find me at drbarbthompson.com. And I'm starting to do a lot of neat kind of in-person courses, and those can be found at counterculturesolutions.com.
Perfect. And yes, I would totally encourage you to go check out Barb's courses, content, go to her website, learn all about her, the programs, who she helps, etc. Thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Tammy. I had so much fun. Thank you for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. To the audience, thanks again for watching or listening to the Executive Excel podcast today. Know that you're valued and appreciated. If you found anything helpful in the show today, please make sure you follow, like, subscribe, do all the things because it's free and it helps get this message out to other leaders like you potentially who are feeling discouraged or overwhelmed by stress or burnout. Until next time, folks, stay grounded, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.